Silence has a power that frightens people. It does not raise its voice. It does not try to convince anyone. It does not need to prove anything. In a world where everyone wants to talk, explain, argue, and justify, the one who remains calm and quiet often looks weak or submissive at first glance. Yet if you observe more carefully, you will see something else. Almost no one dares to truly attack someone who is deeply at peace. It is as if there were an invisible barrier, a silent presence that disarms others effortlessly. Ancient wisdom says that the deepest waters make the least noise. The same is true of the human soul. When you understand the nature of silence, you realize it is not the absence of a response, but a much higher form of presence. Instead of jumping into conflict, silence watches. Instead of trying to prove its worth, it rests in inner certainty. Instead of being dragged into reactions, it preserves energy, clarity, and dignity. On this path, we will explore why noise is so often a sign of insecurity, how Taoist masters see the power of non-forcing action in the middle of conflict, and why reacting is often just a subtle way of bowing to an aggressor. We will walk through the parable of the empty boat, dive into the idea of becoming untouchable, see how silence throws the aggressor's chaos back at them, and look at the price your body and mind pay every time you decide to fight. This is not an invitation to run away from the world, but to inhabit it in a different way. Instead of becoming harder, to become more like water. Instead of living on the defensive, to learn how to become the calm center of any storm. As we move forward, you may notice that real power does not need to be displayed. It simply is. And precisely because of that, very few people have the courage to attack it. Notice how the most insecure people are often the loudest. They jump into every argument, feel attacked by any opinion, and constantly feel the need to explain themselves. Noise is often an unconscious plea for validation. It is as if the person were shouting, "Look at me! Recognize that I exist, that I am right, that I matter." When that validation does not come, the tone rises, the words get sharper, and the conflict starts to feed on itself. Masters of the past remind us that too much noise is a symptom of a restless mind, a mind that cannot tolerate emptiness, that cannot stay with inner silence, will try to fill everything with opinions, judgments, and reactions. This urge to respond immediately, to correct, to argue, rarely comes from strength. It usually comes from fear. Fear of losing control, fear of looking weak, fear of not being respected. Taoist wisdom speaks of a principle called non-forcing action, which we can understand as acting without pushing, without going against the natural flow. Applied to conflict, this means, do not rush to answer. Do not let yourself be pulled into the other person's emotional storm. Instead of stepping onto the battlefield they offer you, remain in the center of your own inner ground. In this context, not acting is refusing to play by the rules the other is trying to impose. Whenever someone attacks, provokes, or belittles you, there is a silent invitation for you to step into the arena. The moment you react, you have accepted their terms. Your mood starts to depend on their words. Your peace becomes a hostage to someone else's behavior. Your sense of self begins to shape itself around their criticism or their praise. Reacting impulsively is, in a very real way, handing your center over to the aggressor and letting them decide how you are going to feel. Ancient wisdom says, the one who controls their own reaction controls the conflict. By not answering right away, by listening calmly, by letting the first wave of emotion pass, you remain sovereign over yourself. The other person may shout, mock, or try to manipulate you. But if there is a firm clarity inside you, the attack loses much of its impact. It is like an arrow shot into empty space. There is nothing for it to stick into. Here we reach the first major shift in perspective. Perhaps true power in a confrontation is not about having the last word, nor about winning debates, but about preserving your own consciousness clear and serene. When you are no longer easily provoked, many attacks simply dissolve for lack of fuel. An old Taoist parable tells that one day a man was rowing his small boat across a misty lake. The water was calm, the morning was quiet, and he was lost in his own thoughts. Suddenly, he felt a strong jolt. Another boat had collided with his, nearly knocking him into the water. Filled with anger, he jumped to his feet, ready to curse whoever had done that, his chest tight with rage and his mind boiling. But when he looked at the other boat, he saw there was no one in it. The boat was empty, drifting on the water, carried only by the current. In that instant, all his fury lost its meaning. Who could he blame now? Who could he shout at? He realized that the anger consuming him was coming from within, not from the empty boat. The object that had triggered his rage had no intention, no will, no awareness. The explosion he felt was actually an inner movement. The masters use this parable to remind us that many people who attack us are like empty boats. They do not really know what they are doing. They are full of pain, fear, old wounds, and confusion. Their harsh words, their attacks, and their sarcasm are all pushed by the current of their own suffering. When you respond with fury, it is as if you believed there were a cruel captain deliberately steering the boat against you. But in many cases, there is only unconsciousness. To become empty in this sense does not mean losing your identity, but becoming less of a fixed target. When your mind stops clinging to every criticism and every offensive gesture, it becomes much harder to truly hurt your heart. You still see what is happening, but you no longer let it define who you are. The insult comes, but finds no place to land. It passes through you, like wind crossing a forest. Deep silence works like that state of emptiness. When someone throws harsh words at you, and you do not rush to respond, what happens? They start to hear their own echo. Your silence becomes a mirror, sending their noise back to them. Many people feel uncomfortable in front of that because they cannot dump their tension into you. They are forced, even if only for a brief moment, to face their own inner turmoil. There is also a physical and energetic dimension to this choice. Arguing, shouting, and working yourself up burns an enormous amount of vital energy. Your heart races, your muscles tighten, your breathing becomes shallow. Stress hormones flood your system. It is as if each fight charged a hidden fee to your body, a debt that accumulates over time. The wisdom of silence is also the wisdom of preserving your life force, of not wasting yourself on battles that lead nowhere. Remembering the image of the empty boat in moments of conflict allows you to pause and ask yourself, what in me is reacting right now? Is there really a conscious enemy here? Or am I fighting my own reflection? That simple question already starts to undo the need to strike back. Instead of answering with violence, you can choose to simply watch the situation, the way you would watch the lake slowly returning to stillness after a small wave. When you remain silent in the face of an attack, something subtle happens. The other person loses their script. They expected resistance, excuses, justifications, maybe a counterattack. Instead, they find your presence, your attention, and a space that does not react immediately. This kind of strategic ambiguity is powerful because it leaves the aggressor unsure of what you are thinking, feeling, or planning. And the unknown is often more disturbing than any clear response. This is not about manipulation, but about keeping your freedom. When you reveal little, you are not putting on a mask. You are staying open. You do not cling to labels. You do not need to define yourself all the time. You do not live explaining who you are. This attitude resembles the Taoist idea of the uncarved block, something simple, whole, not yet shaped by the demands and projections of the world. The uncarved block is not confused. It is pure potential. It can become many things, but it has not been reduced to a fixed identity. In a world that demands you have an opinion on everything and take a side in every debate, remaining somewhat undefined is a form of self-protection. You observe, you feel, you wait. You resist the pressure to rush into positions, banners, and roles. This simplicity unsettles people because many confuse complexity with depth. Yet true wisdom is often found in what remains essential, with no decoration. Nature mirrors this principle everywhere. Look at an old rock at the edge of a river. It does not introduce itself, does not explain itself, does not defend itself. It simply exists. The water flows, the seasons change, people come and go, and the rock remains there in silence. The river has no idea what it believes in. Still, it does its work. It sustains, supports, and belongs to the landscape. There is a quiet dignity in everything that exists without constantly announcing itself. Cultivating the gaze of the void means learning to witness before you react. It is as if you stepped slightly behind your own thoughts and emotions, watching them pass by without becoming completely fused with them. Someone provokes you. Anger rises. Your heart beats faster. Answers start forming in your mind. But a part of you simply observes that movement, like someone watching clouds drift across the sky. That part of you that observes is your silent center. This detached gaze does not erase your emotions. It just keeps them from taking total control. You still feel, but you do not drown. You perceive the provocation, but you are not defined by it. Over time, this habit of observing instead of immediately reacting creates a precious inner space. Within that space, you can choose your response rather than being pushed by the impulse of the moment. Ambiguity becomes a kind of shield. Others see your calm face, but they cannot access your deepest core. In this way, silence, simplicity, and the witnessing gaze interweave. Together they become a kind of soft, invisible armor that does not harden your heart, but protects it. You remain sensitive to life, but you no longer become easy prey for other people's chaos. Ancient wisdom says that true silence is not the absence of strength, but strength held in reserve. When you choose not to respond, it is not because you lack words, but because you have enough power to decide when they are worth using. Mature silence is a careful economy of energy. It is the decision not to waste your presence on what does not deserve your whole soul. It is not passivity, but a clear choice about when it is meaningful to speak. Taoist masters love to compare this attitude to water. Water is soft. It yields, bends, and flows around obstacles. It does not fight for space. Yet over time, it is water that wears down the hardest stone. It does not invade, it simply persists with gentleness. Hardness looks strong at first, but it shatters when it receives an impact greater than it can bear. Softness may seem fragile, but it moves through the years without breaking. In life, the most flexible person is often the one still standing after the storm. In conflict, being like water means you do not harden at the first sign of attack. Instead of crashing head-on into the other person's rock, you flow around it, watching carefully. The attack does not find something rigid to clash against. It finds fluidity. And what does not meet direct resistance often loses intensity. The person expected a wall to punch, and instead, they found a river. That reversal alone can dissolve much of the confrontational tension. because the aggressor cannot get the reaction they were looking for. To turn this vision into something practical, you need a few simple yet profound tools. When an argument begins to heat up, start by slowing your breath before you do anything else. Inhale more slowly. Exhale consciously. This tiny gesture sends a signal to your body that the threat is not mortal and that there is room for calm. Then create an inner pause of a few seconds before you speak. That pause is the cradle of conscious silence. Inside this pause, you can quietly ask yourself, do I really need to respond right now? Will this response bring peace or just feed the fire? Very often that question is enough to help you choose a shorter, simpler sentence, or even complete silence. Instead of offering long justifications, you might say only, I hear what you're feeling, or I'll think about that. And in some cases, you simply look, breathe, and say nothing at all. In situations of high tension, practicing silence is not running away from the conversation. It is refusing to talk while you are at war inside. If you feel on the verge of exploding, ask for a break, step away, go for a walk, drink some water, breathe fresh air. Let your body stand down before you return to the dialogue. That is an act of courage. You are choosing to care for your energy and for the quality of the presence you bring into the relationship. Over time, this posture changes something deep in your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who must defend against everything and everyone, and you begin to recognize yourself as a conscious center that chooses which battles are worth your life force. The turning point is here. No longer reacting on impulse stops looking like weakness and becomes a sign of quiet strength, a strength that does not need to prove itself. When you live this way, people around you feel it. Some will lose interest in attacking you because they see you are not easily dragged into the arena. Others, confronted with their own reflection in your silence, may even question themselves and soften. As for you, you keep your energy, your dignity, and your inner peace. Modern psychology, especially through Carl Jung, reminds us of something the ancients already sensed. Very often we see in others what we do not want to see in ourselves. This hidden side, which Jung called the shadow, is everything we reject, deny, or fear in our own soul. When someone attacks you without any clear reason, when they project onto you motives and flaws that do not really match who you are, they may actually be wrestling with their own shadow and using you as a screen. When you respond with violence, the cycle completes itself. The projection finds fuel. The other person feels confirmed in their distorted view, and the conflict deepens. But when you stay in the position of witness, something different happens. Your silence, your calm gaze, your body that neither lunges forward nor dramatically retreats. All this creates a space where the other person, if they have even a small opening, might start to notice that much of the storm is coming from inside. Ancient wisdom says that the true sage is like the eye of a hurricane, right at the center of the storm, yet surrounded by stillness. The world around may spin, people may get agitated, words may grow sharp, and still, deep inside, there is a point of quiet that is not easily disturbed. Becoming that center does not mean being perfect or never feeling anything. It means learning to return again and again to that silent place within. Throughout this journey, we have seen that noise often hides insecurity, that non-forcing action amid conflict can be a higher form of action, and that reacting on impulse hands the other person control over your inner state. The parable of the empty boat reminded us that many attacks arise from unconsciousness, and that by becoming a little less full of ego, you become harder to hit. We spoke of silence as a mirror that returns chaos to the one who created it, of the energetic cost of living in constant battle, and of the discreet strength of remaining simple and undefined in a world obsessed with labels. If you choose to apply this wisdom, even in small ways, you may notice deep changes. One extra breath before answering. A moment of quiet instead of a long explanation. A gaze that observes rather than a gaze that attacks. Little by little, you stop being pushed around by other people's aggression and begin to move through the world with more lightness, like someone who knows the value of their own peace. If this way of seeing life resonates with you, I invite you to walk further with us through more reflections like this on the channel Taoist Diary. Subscribe calmly, in your own time, as a small gesture of care for your consciousness. Our intention here is to walk together, contemplating nature, the human mind, and the paths of simplicity. May you remember in every conflict that you can choose to be the still center of the storm. The noise around you may continue, but within you a space of silence can open that no one can invade. In that space, words stop being weapons and become bridges. And from there, every step, even on difficult ground, can be taken with more presence and more truth. Wisdom is found in the walking,